Okay. So you have 7 cells with 8 nuclei. All right? And this is the female gametophyte. Yeah.
What's the point of the degenerating megaspores? Why would give you 4 if you only need 1?
It's because the process of meiosis is 2. Remember meiosis is 2 rounds of cell division. So those 2 rounds of cell division produce 4 cells. It's just how it goes.
Okay.
Yeah. And then what ends up happening along the way is, like every time they divide, they give most of their stuff to one, and they get, yeah. Just the way it goes. Okay. All right. So now we have. This is where we end up. We have the female gametophyte with the egg cell, and these other cells here aren't that important. It's this thing in here that becomes really interesting. So this one cell with the 2 polar nuclei and the egg cell. Keep your eye on those 2. All right. Pollination. Pollen grain lands on the stigma. This is kind of cool. The plant is able to read the proteins on the surface of that pollen and know if it's a member of, if it's actually from that individual plant or from a different plant. This is kind of that. So again, the plant doesn't want to pollinate itself. And so it can actually read the surface proteins on the pollen and be like, are you me? Are we one? If we're one, we're not going to do this. Okay. Anyway, so as long as it's non-self, what we say is the pollen will germinate. Okay. And when the pollen germinates, what happens is the tube cell grows down into the stigma. The generative cell divides, goes through mitosis, it divides and produces 2 sperm nuclei, is what they are. Okay? Tube cell grows down here, grows into this thing called a micropyle. It breaks through one of those cells, and it releases those 2 nuclei. One of those nuclei fertilizes the egg, and that becomes the embryo. Makes sense? That's classic biology. But the other one fertilizes this cell, and it becomes a triploid cell. Has 3 sets of DNA. 2 from mom, 1 from dad. Isn't that crazy? So plants engage in what we call double fertilization. So 1 is egg plus sperm. I'm putting sperm in quotes because it's not really a sperm, because a sperm has a flagellum. Egg plus sperm, and that gives us the embryo. And the other one is this triploid cell. That this is going to become the nutritive tissue, or the endosperm. Which is 2/3 mom and 1/3 dad. Now, why? It's an excellent question. I have not seen a good explanation. I'm sure there's one out there, but I have not seen a good explanation. I think, again, I don't know. It's a good extra credit opportunity. I'll give extra credit if you can find out. Okay. All right. So, back to the embryo. The embryo has 2 cells to it. This is the first one. The terminal cell and the basal cell. It undergoes mitosis and develops. And here we get this embryonic plant. And we can begin to see the different tissue layers. the epidermal tissue, the ground tissue, and the vascular tissue. And this thing here is going to become the root, the radical of the embryo. All right. So we have the, yeah.
Question. So earlier you said there's going to be one surviving, what was it? The surviving
Yeah.
microphone. So that is going to be 8. Is that the one that's going to be 8 in number?
So there are 8 nuclei, but only 7 cells. So this divides, right, goes through meiosis, produces 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 nuclei. But then, so the nuclei divide, but when the actual cytoplasms divide, it produces 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 cells. 6 of them have 1 nucleus, and 1 has 2.
And I have another question.
Yeah.
So can you go to the slide where the colon
Yeah.
is the tube? So who's forming the tube? The colon?
And the pollen itself grows, yeah.
Like,
Yep.
how?
It germinates, it gets a signal from the stigma that says you're good to go, and it starts to grow.
So just produce, like, where does that pollen get resources and stuff to produce?
It's inside of it, I mean, it's a living cell. Right, it's a living cell. So like, think of like an amoeba. Amoeba is a single cell organism. Stretches out its, cytoplasm. Same thing, basically. But yeah, crazy, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So now, okay. As I said before, within the embryo, we can see the vascular tissue, the ground tissue, the epidermal tissue. This is going to become part of the root, which becomes the radical over here. All right. These little pieces here become the cotyledons. Remember, the cotyledons are those embryonic leaves that come out of the seed. Is this a monocot or a dicot? Dicot, very good. Okay. This is the apical meristem. All right. Now, so this is the seed, right? This seed, remember, a seed is a what? It's a baby in a box with a lunch, okay? Now, we have the baby. The box, this seed coat here, right, is the remnant of the ovule itself, or it's produced by the ovule, I should say. That lunch is going to be the nutritive tissue that was formed from that triploid cell. All right? All right, okay. Let's skip that a little bit here. So, here are some examples. This is a kidney. These are different views of it. Here is the embryo. This is called the radical. That's the first root that's going to come out. These are the cotyledons. When you eat a bean, what you're actually eating are the cotyledons. It's kind of cool. You can see these. This is the beginning. That's the cotyledon there. That's the leaf itself. That's the radical down here. This is the edge view of it. Those are the cotyledons. And then over here, that's the nutritive tissue around it. Monocot corn. Here's the radical. The radical is the first root that comes out. So this is the embryo here. There's the radical, the first root. This is the cotyledon, which in monocots called a scutellum. Don't worry about that, it's just cotyledon. Then here's that endosperm, here's that nutritive tissue. When you eat corn, that's what you're eating. All right? And then here's that seed coat. And in this case, it ends up being fused with pericarp. Remember, the pericarp is part of the fruit. All right. So that's what's going on in the seed. What's happening in the ovary? Remember, the ovary becomes swollen. It totally varies from plant to plant. We'll look at the fruits for a second. So in a fruit, that ovary becomes swollen. The plant pumps all these different juices in it. So for example, in a peach, a simple fruit, you've got the seed in the middle with the embryo and the endosperm, and then that pericarp around here, that's what we eat. And the hope, again, the plant's part is that we eat the fruit, and then we poop out the seed later on. Remember the three parts of the pericarp? Exocarp, which is the fuzzy part on a peach. Mesocarp. And then this here right next to the seed is the endocarp. Very good. Okay. Some plants have aggregate fruits. So here you have multiple ovules coming from a single ovary, and that gives us each of those little juicy balls in the berry. Drupes are interesting. They have a fleshy fruit with a seed. Almonds are drupes, cherries are drupes, apricots are drupes. Coconuts are drupes. Coconuts are funky drupes because, so if you've ever seen like a coconut in its husk, have you ever seen like a full coconut? So what you usually see at the store is just part of it. So the exocarp is this kind of husky, like I don't know how would you describe it. It's like a corn husk. Yes, it's very heavy. That's the exocarp. The mesocarp's inside of that, and then the coconut that we think of itself is the seed. The embryo is on the end. Like if you look at a coconut, it looks like it has a little face. That's where the embryo is. And then it has two different types of endosperms. It has the solid endosperm, which is the coconut meat that you eat, and it has a liquid endosperm as well. And that's the coconut water that you drink. Isn't that crazy? Yeah. And the endocarp is the fuzzy stuff on the outside of the like the coconut itself. That's the fuzzy. Yeah. Okay. Some plants, like the strawberry, it's kind of a trip here. This is the fruit here with the seed on the outside, and the actual berry itself is a leaf. It's a leaf that's just been like pumped full of sugar. I think I talked to you guys about this last time, I got it backwards. What you're eating here is a leaf, and then the fruit are stuck to the outside. Okay, cool. No. Pineapples, multiple fruits, so these are all multiple ovaries that are put together. Some fruits aren't edible at all, but they've evolved for seed dispersal nonetheless, like maples. So maples have these cool helicopter things on them. So here's the seed, and then this is the fruit. A helicopter thing. What happens is when it falls, and goes away. Some fruits have hooks on them. Those are the hitchhikers. Some have little hairs and downs that blow away, like the cottonwood trees, or the dandelions. All different ways. Okay. So now we have the seed. It goes off somewhere into the environment, and it lands. And it stays there until the conditions are just right. Now, for some seeds, that means that maybe they had to be digested, and they passed through the gut of an animal. Some seeds need to be burned by fire. Did I talk to you guys about that? No? So ponderosa pines, for example, their seeds won't germinate until they've been burned in a fire. Now, why would you evolve this? It seems kind of strange. But think about it from the seed's perspective. The tree is producing these seeds, they drop to the ground, okay? Now, the seed's sitting up on the ground in a forest. There are all these trees up there, right? There are bushes, there are branches that have fallen down. There's all this wood on the ground. What do plants need to grow?
Sunlight.
Sunlight, good. Water, nutrients, cool. Now, it's a really jumbled up forest. There's not a lot of sunlight. And you're a little seed way down there in the soil, right? Fire comes through. Now, most fires don't burn very hot. As a matter of fact, most fires don't burn hot enough to burn living trees. They do burn though are the grasses, the shrubs, the annual plants. They burn what they call a fuel wood, and that's the dead branches and things that are on the ground. So it comes through and it burns all that out. That seed that's down there got burned, and because it got burned, its seed coat got broken open, and now it can start germinating, it can start growing. And this is a good time to grow, because all the bushes have been burned away, all the extra woods have been burned away, and maybe some standing dead trees they burned too. So now there's sunlight that reaches the ground. In addition to that, all that burned wood produces a lot of nutrients for the soil as well. So now you've got sunlight, you've got nutrients, and usually when do these fires stop burning? When the rains start. And now you got water. Okay? Yeah.
But don't conifers, this is particular conifers, right?
That's a ponderosa pine, it's one of them, yeah.
Well, don't they take a long time to grow in? So when the shrubs come back and overtake them?
It can, well, it can take a while. I mean, it depends. They're pretty cool. So these long-lived trees grow very, very slowly, and remember conifers don't need a lot of sunlight. Like once they start growing, they don't need a ton of sunlight. So you'll see this thing, it's kind of neat, where I've noticed about the hylobos, because trees have fallen over from time to time. You'll walk through there and there's just these little funky, like just little trees just hanging out, not growing, not growing, not growing. Like they're competing with everything else, not growing, but they're there, they're doing fine, look kind of scrawny. Then all of a sudden a big tree falls over and they get sunlight. Next thing you know, they just start growing up. So many of them are just waiting for the opportunity to be able to, and maybe they'll never get it, right? Maybe they'll never get it. 1 in 1,000 might be able to do that. But they're able to stay at that small stage for a very long time until they get their opportunity to go. So another hand up. Okay. But the big thing usually that is required for seed germination, for the seed to start growing, is water. Water, water, water. Water is super, super important. Okay? So there are 3 phases of seed germination. The first phase, this is where water starts being taken into. And that seed coat needs to be broken in order for this to happen. So seed coat gets broken, water comes in, and the plant starts growing. Mitochondria begin doing their job, consuming more oxygen. They start protein synthesis. Okay? Then in phase 2, they begin producing more mRNA, and the mitochondria multiply. Now during this phase, they aren't taking up any more water. They're just growing more mitochondria and making more mRNA. But then in phase 3, the radical, which is that first root, that begins to grow. So before the leaves grow, the root grows. Because remember, at this stage, the plant's not doing photosynthesis, it's doing respiration. It needs those mitochondria, and those mitochondria need oxygen, and the plant needs water. Okay, so the cells begin growing and dividing, and then it goes on from there. I've got an image of this here. Okay, water enters. Embryo produces this hormone called gibberellin, and what's going on here is the starches in here aren't easily catalyzed or metabolized via the embryo because they're being stored. So the gibberellin starts causing those to become more edible, basically. Root begins to grow, brings in more water. That water is used to convert more and more of the starches for food for the embryo, and the embryo starts growing. This is why when you see seeds germinating at first, they're not green, they're white, because they're just using the nutrients stored in the cell to grow. Yeah.
So for the bryophytes, do they have like radicals or?
No.
So then
No,
they don't go through that phase.
they don't have seeds, they don't do anything like, yeah, they're totally different. Totally different, yeah. But excellent question, right? Because they're living in water all the time. Yeah, excellent question. Yeah.
The gibberellin.
Gibberellin, yeah.
That happens during phase 1.
That happens during phase 2. Is that right? That happens during phase 1. You're right. It happens during phase 1. Yeah. Okay. These are specific examples. This is a monocot, how corn does it. Really, what I want you to focus on is this right here. Water is important. Water causes those starches in the endosperm to be more accessible to the embryo. Yeah.
So is phase 1 the only time when the plant actually takes an oxygen?
No. It's taking oxygen all the time. Roots need oxygen to grow. Yeah, right. Plants need oxygen. Yeah. But I kind of make fun of people when they say, "Oh, they need oxygen." No, the plants need oxygen as well because they have mitochondria that need oxygen as well. They can't live without oxygen, but they produce their own oxygen as a byproduct of photosynthesis. So as long as they're photosynthesized, they're producing oxygen. Yeah.
So it sounds like it needs more water at the very beginning when it's a seed to be able to
Yeah.
produce. But when you take a look at it, so the seed is tiny, and then you have a tree that's full grown.
Yeah.
Relatively speaking, like off of a ratio, does the seed need more water to
Yes.
grow than
Than the big tree does. Yep, absolutely. That's why if you've ever planted anything, planted seeds, you water. They need lots and lots of water early on. And then afterwards, they're actually per cell, they need less water than they do when they're young. And the main reason for that is that the starches stored here need to be hydrolyzed so that they're more accessible for the plant to grow. Same thing with us. This is why when we, like you can't just, like I had oatmeal for breakfast this morning. I can't just eat oats. What do I have to do? I gotta add water to them, right? And it's not just that my body can't digest it, it's that the starches that make up the oats are not in a state that can be processed by my body, right? So the water is necessary in order to activate those things so they can start, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So if you plant a seed in like a dark room and you add water,
Huh?
does that mean only the roots grow because there's no sun?
No, it'll start growing its cotyledons too. Yeah. Have you ever done that?
No.
I think I brought it in like last week. Did I show you this? There were some seeds that grew in my compost bag. Did I show you that?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the stem was all white. Yeah. They'll do that. They can do it for a long time. Yeah. You can totally grow little white plants. Eventually they'll die because, you know, they need to photosynthesize at some point. Yeah. Okay. All right, cool. Now I want to show you guys the sex movie. So this is, so I want you to watch the rest of this for, I want you to watch, it's called Sexual Encounters of the Floral Kind. Called Sexual Encounters, to watch Sexual Encounters of the Floral Kind, not anything else.
What do you mean by anything?
What do you do in your own time is your own business. That's all I'm gonna say. All right.
Sexual encounters.
Watch Sexual Encounters of the Floral Kind. All right, it's an old movie. We only got like 12 minutes left. I want to show you. So, okay. So these are some cool examples of how plants have evolved to use animals to help them reproduce. Okay? Make sure that sound is on.
Slowly, fighting her way up through the still, charred, sandy ground, A newly hatched female, a thinned wasp, emerges
Is it too loud?
and takes her first look at the world. As she lives underground, she's no use for wings, so she's wingless, ant-like and drab, anything but beautiful. The females climb for only one purpose. They want to find males, then to go back underground to search out and paralyze beetle grubs in which to lay their eggs. Like a maiden nervously waiting for a blind date, she adds the finishing touches, at the same time releasing an absolutely irresistible perfume. And she waits to clasp her partner with open jaws. Elegant, the winged males hop on the scent of heat of action and emerge to few weeks before the actually stop concentrating in the flat. He flies her to this flower. There she feeds through him from the tip of his abdomen and gets both sperm and food all at the same moment, and probably the only nectar meal of her life.
You guys understand what's happening? She's attached to him, like to his penis.
Then
He's
tries to
eating,
back home,
and while he eats, she gets food and
she'll
sperm.
just disappear underground forever. So with this unusual orchid, a hammer orchid. It could be coincidence that all the females are still underground when the orchid flowers, but it is quite beyond coincidence when the flower assumes the shape, mimics the body, and even gives off the scent of the female wasp, and this precisely when there are lots of sex-starved male wasps around. The hinge joint, the correct length of arm, a glistening sticky pad between two yellow pollen sacs at exactly the right distance from the dummy wasp, must have been grown with incredible accuracy. It is perfect for a bizarre coupling of wasp with flower.
So what's he trying to do? He's trying to mate with her. But it's not her.
Sufficiently deceived, he tries to fly off with her, but succeeds only in catapulting himself into the orchid's anthers. At last, his furry back peels off the yellow pollen-bearing sacs. He gives up and tears himself free.
But what's he got on him now?
Pollen.
Although the go-between carries the pollen to other flowers, for the orchid's deception to work, he must visit another hammer orchid, like the wasp visiting now, bringing male elements to receptive female parts.
So everybody understands what's going on here, right? So the males are looking for mates. The flower has, this orchid has evolved this thing that kind of looks like, I mean, to a little wasp, a female, but more importantly has the same pheromones, which is amazing, as the female. The male tries to grab onto it and fly away like he will with a female, but he can't. It's sticky and it's got this hinge on it. And then he tries to fly away, he ended up getting shoved into the pollen. Now, his buddies probably make fun of him. Like, dude, like we've all made that mistake. But in order for this to work, he's got to do it twice. Which means they're like, dude, we think you're vegisexual. Yeah.
I was gonna ask why they come back, but would they come back with the pheromones? Because the pheromones are what
They're still trying to find a female wasp. Right? He still hasn't found his female wasp yet. Yeah, so he goes to another one, he doesn't go back to the same one, he goes to another one.
But it's the pheromones.
It's the pheromones, and it kind of looks like it, it's about the right size.
I feel like you have to mess up enough to be able to.
Yeah, pheromones, yes, it's mostly the pheromones, yeah. Good, and now it's
With
with pollen.
pollen crushed into its stigma, the hammer orchid is fertilized. The little dummy female withers, its purpose served. The orchid's meager resources are now required for the swelling seed pod. The deception has worked perfectly. But does it always?
Alright, we're gonna,
If a female inhabited island off the coast of Sardinia, there is a plant which has adopted these very blowflies as its go-betweens.
so,
This lily
blowflies, I should back up for a second. Blowflies lay their eggs on rotting flesh, right? It's a great place for a little maggot to grow up. It burrows in the flesh, has lots of protein, that sort of stuff. So this is similar to the skunk cabbage, where skunk cabbages are fertilized or pollinated by flies as well. But this lily is special. You'll see.
a kind of heirloom, is surely a conception of the Marquis de Sade. In the chamber below is a most elaborate structure. A dark passage with a huge central column supporting a battery of male stamens. Beneath is a crown of spikes guarding a second battery of female flowers. The perfume of this flower, the stench of a rotting corpse, is so powerful that it is irresistible to flies which swarm in from all over the island. From the first day the flower opens, female flies land and start to search for the dankest and darkest place to lay their eggs. They make for the deep, hairy throat, which becomes, as they pass the guard hairs, a one-way street, up which there can be no return for at least 2 days, or maybe not at all. They feed on nectar, oblivious of danger. Any pollen they might by chance be carrying is brushed off on the receptive female flowers as they reach the murky depths. So good, so realistic is the foul smell of carrion, so brilliant the deception. The flies actually lay their eggs pointlessly. For even though they hatch, the maggots find no real carrion, nothing on which to feast, and die